Okay, this is Rich Prendergast for the town of Lyme, the chairman of the WPCA, calling the order for a regular WPCA meeting on November 14th, 2023. I'm going to just go over the agenda and then we'll get into the business. First off, this is a virtual meeting because this particular time of the year and the fact that we had a recent election, all the rooms are taken in the town hall. Even though we reserved the room 12 months ahead of time, we got bumped, and it's okay. Our group can do this a little bit easier than some other groups. So the agenda is we're going to do approval of minutes. We're going to do a budget updates. The main part of the thing will be item 4, business, the septic pump out reminder mailing update, the Soundview Sewer Miscellaneous Area B project, clean water funding application and additional funding status. We do have some minor correspondence to go over in item 5. Item 6, new business. We're going to talk about an invoice process idea that Andrea has drafted. We're also going to talk about some ideas that I was suggested about reaching out to the public with new ideas. And I think it's a place to talk about an FYI about the cost sharing agreements update that I'll explain later. Then we're going to have a public comment and then adjourn. So the first order of business is, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from October 10th, 2023?
I'll make a motion, Dimitri.
Dimitri made a motion. Steve, do you second it?
I'll second.
Okay. Any changes, edits, comments about the minutes from October 10th? I'm not hearing any. So let's go to vote. Since we're virtual, I will poll each member. So let's start off with Steve Tsunami. How do you vote? Yay. Dimitri, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Steve Ervitz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Corey Bullock, how do you vote?
Yes.
Andrea Lombard, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. There's a call-in user 1. I'm not sure if you're another WPCA member. Are you? Okay. I don't hear any nays. Motion passed unanimous. On to the next item. Budget update and planning and review new invoices. As far as I know, there's no invoices, and we haven't made any expenses paid that much, so I don't think much has changed, but I'll hand over the microphone. Andrea, do you want to make a comment about our budget update?
Yes. So we are waiting. The only invoice that came in was the clerk for $93. Our remaining balance right now is $56,765.24. We've encumbered the printing. That invoice hasn't come through, extra hours for Erica and postage. So we've been waiting for that. I have called Tracy a few times, and I think the election sort of had everybody kind of a little bit out of sorts. But as of 11, this printing of the budget came out at 11/6. What I do want to call your attention to is the WPCA has a general fund account, which is our approved budget, but we now have 2 more account numbers in the town budget. One is the 05, which is the WPCA cost sharing fund, and there is nothing in there. And then there's the Clean Water Project Fund, which is fund number 34. And that is now pre-populated with the anticipated clean water funds. So we now have 3 designated separate budgets within the town budget.
I think is it more accurate to say they're not budgets, but they're line items?
So line items would be under the account number. I guess the best way to say it is an account number. So we have three separate account numbers within the town budget.
Right, because we didn't do some kind of pass a new budget.
No, we have one approved budget through the Board of Finance. And then we have two additional account numbers to help keep the clean water funds completely separate, and then to track if there's any cost sharing funds. So we now have three accounts. And if you're looking at the town budget, we're on different pages, we're in different areas, and we have three different account numbers.
So we're gonna have a discussion on the clean water funding application and
Yep.
additional funding grants. But that clean water application will have relevance to what you're talking about here. And it's just basically to get ready. But I think, is there anything else to talk about budget updates?
No, but if anyone is looking, our budget is on page 19. That's the approved WPCA budget. Then if you go to page 72, then you're going to see the 05 WPCA cost sharing fund. And then if you go to page 106, that's where you're going to see the clean water project fund designated as 34.
Right, now, WPCA members, it's not in your packet. That I know of.
No, it isn't, because I just got it Monday.
Yeah, okay. Steve, you have a question?
I do. Under the second account, which is the,
Sharing agreement?
It's called the cost sharing fund 05. And it's completely blank. There's nothing in it.
okay.
We
And
had
did you
gotten-
request that, or did the town set that up?
The town set that up.
The
Do you
town
know
set
what
that
that
up,
would be used for?
yes.
I
were
haven't,
given funds-
go ahead,
we were-
Rich.
We were given funds from the private beach associations to do some legal work and to do easement and purchase of right-of-ways.
Oh, we were given money
We were
from,
given money, yes.
okay. I got it.
So, and the money was used up. So I zeroed out a couple years back.
So there's nothing in
we-
it ever. It doesn't even have an original budget. So that's what that is?
It wasn't in a budget. It was how do we collect money for the clean water fund thing that the private beach associations gave us money for. That's how they did it.
Okay.
So the account isn't, we were assuming that the account, well, I was assuming that the account was new, but actually it's old and probably closed out. It was
Yeah,
ma-
it's a line item from the previous finance
Yeah,
director,
okay.
how she managed it. It's on page 72, and to tell you quite honestly, I don't go to page 72. I didn't know.
Yeah,
I mean, I
Anita,
stop at the WPCA budget.
Yeah, Anita identified it for me, and I had to call in to ask her what it was. And so I guess you just answered that, Rich.
Now, we're probably gonna have stuff with cost sharing agreement. That's one of the things we have to work out in the future. Some kind of money that we put in for the cost sharing agreement, something like that. We'll have expenses, part of the ownership of the shared resources. We would likely get maybe money from the state. That's part of the additional funding. I'm not sure how that's gonna work. Right now, that's set up so Old Colony is like the Old Colony Beach Association is, I'm gonna say mouthpiece, but they're the one that's affecting the invoicing once approved collecting money and then paying the shared resource expenses that go through the state. That probably feels as clear as bud. Sorry about that. Municipal finance. Any other questions from WPCA members? Okay. Going to move on to item 4, business, the septic pump out reminder mailing list. This maybe answers your question, Andrea. I talked to the selectman's assistant, Katie, and she said that it has not yet gone out. So that's why you probably you've encumbered, but didn't get the bill yet. We have an estimate, but we didn't get the bill.
Mhm.
So I was hopeful that it would go out this week, and the elections definitely did interfere with doing it out. They wanted, if you remember the last time that we updated the database, we printed out the database and wanted to check and confirm before we sent it to the printer, because a little bit of checking and confirming might save us some money. So I think that is going to be worked on this week and hopefully sent to the printer, and then the septic system reminders will go out to the general public for those people that have septic system that is hasn't been pumped in over 7 years. Any questions about that? I will say one other thing about that. We got at least one person called up and or sent an email saying their septic system on the data on the Carmody septic search database was incorrect. And so I went in after I verified that they actually did get their septic system pumped out. I went in and updated it. In the future, we're making arrangements for a town hall clerk to pick up some extra hours. I don't know if that's Erica or someone else, but the idea is update the database, and we might get a bunch after this notice goes out. But generally speaking, in the past, we don't get too much people responding saying my properties on the database is wrong. I also kind of want to point out, and this was in the correspondence, that this particular issue was West Wind River, who did not update the database. So I called them as well and asked them to start submitting their septic pump out tickets through Carmody, the database. It's not that difficult to do. All the other competitors do it. And the person I talked to transferred me to a couple different people, and I finally got to somebody who then said that they will write a ticket and escalate it to get that to start happening. Western is a very big company, so hopefully they will do that and consistently and updated things. There's likely a bunch of residents that will get the septic system. Hey, you need to pump out your system, and they'll say, well, it's not right. So we will, endeavor to check out, ask them for an invoice, or ask the septic system pump out company to verify that it was pumped out, and we'll update that database. All of this goes to our sewer avoidance compliance. It shows we're making an effort, even if we're not 100% perfect, to manage the septic system policy. And I guess that's all I have to say about that. Any final questions about this item on the agenda from WPCA members? Okay. Moving to the business Soundview business item 4B, Soundview Sewer Miscellaneous Area B, the Clean Water Funding Application Status. So the 60% design review was signed by the previous selectman and the treasurer a while back. It was sent prepared by our bond counsel. Our bond counsel then sent it to the state. Our state had questions, went back and forth, and just as recently as last Friday, and I think again yesterday, our representative in the state confirmed that the agreement is in. I have listed as application, but it's technically an agreement, but it's in the approval loop. There's a number of people that sign off on this. The deep commissioner signs off on this, the state treasurer, the attorney general's office. Once all these sign-offs are done, we then have to submit some other application to then submit invoices, and it's basically the agreements for funding. It's basically taking out a loan. Even though this is an agreement that says that. No one's been able to explain to me why it's two different documents, but it's a standard thing, and the private beach associations have already gone through it. All this leads to us being able to draw money for the first time to pay off our engineer, who's been very grateful and gracious to us by not billing us, but they need to get paid for the work that they've done. This same agreement also identifies past revenue, or not revenue, past planning expenses that we could then submit invoices to. And that is not 25% grant, that is 55% grant. So submitting those invoices and getting reimbursement, that money will go from the state back to the town of Oline's general fund. It will not go into the WPCA budget because the town paid for those planning expenses over the years. Let's see if I got all things, looking for my notes. Okay, that's all that I had for that particular item. Before I go to the next one, does anyone have any questions about this process or what we're doing? Any WPCA members? Okay. The last thing I'll say about this is once we get the 60% done, we'll then turn around and ask Wood and Current to prepare the 90%. And the 90% will then submit the same application, and those additional invoices will go through and get approved, and then be go for reimbursement. Then 100%, which is the finalizing of the design, and then we'll be ready to go to bid. We'll be able to put bids out for the Soundview and Miscellaneous Area B design part and construction. When we do that, we'll have completed at least a major part of the project. Doesn't necessarily mean that saying we're going to install. The idea is you send out the bids, you then evaluate the bids, you refresh your cost tables and estimates, and you look at your funding and so forth that we'll talk about next. And at that point, we'll be able to then give an update to what's going to happen, what's going to be done, and if we can go forward. And this is also contingent on the private beach associations, where they are going out to bid early next year to refresh the bids that they've already done. So when you have all those pieces together, including the shared part together, then you can put in the costs and you can see, what affordability is there. And this leads me to my next item, the status of additional funding and grant applications. In the info pack, we got a letter from the state, and that letter essentially says they've evaluated our submitted not affordable application, I guess, and saying that the whole project was not affordable, which was one legal way that we could pause the project indefinitely, saying that it just was not affordable, and they have a formula that they use. We submitted a combined affordability, I guess, evaluation with the beach associations. And it wasn't just a little unaffordable, it was a lot of unaffordable. It was way over the trigger. But this letter basically says to all the beach associations, including in the town of Old Lyme, that in addition to, so we find the evaluation, determination that the subject's project presents a financial hardship. In addition to the 25% community grant available through the Clean Water Funds, therefore, we're ready to coordinate next steps to do additional funding, supplemental funding up to 15 million. That 15 million essentially pays for majority of the shared resources and brings down the whole project to what the EPA says is affordable. I think it greatly helps the Sound View people. And I'll say right now, the discussions we've had with the state said that what they plan on doing is providing the money for the shared resources as the easiest way, because we have an existing agreement about who owns what. So we have the total cost, and then we have our share of the cost, and then we'll get funding for our share of that cost, essentially wiping that part of the cost off. What's leaving us with a nominal amount for the shared resource costs, and then, and then the cost for the individual neighborhoods. So from that, it's designed where it basically reduces our costs and keeps it under various referendum limits already. But each beach association will have to evaluate the impact to them and state for them. Not, I can't really say for them. And we'll do the same to see what the impact is. And if you can imagine, we still, with this letter is good, but we're still requesting for what the next steps are, and to find out what we're calling the guardrails, but I call it the terms and conditions. So we have a letter that says they're promising the money, but we don't have the contract terms and conditions. In my experience in life, in business, lots of times everything's agreed to, but then when you see the contract, there's things in the contract you just can't live with. So I'm very optimistic, but it's not a done deal. Any questions about that?
I have a question, Richard.
Yes, go ahead, Dimitri, you're recognized.
How far is going to be scheduled? Say, I know that those private beaches almost ready to start next year. How far are going to be Sound View Beach from their schedule? I mean, the reason I'm asking, because if it's going to take a long time, our cost might be higher than theirs because of that.
Well, so it's, I think I know the gist of the question. So let me explain it this way. The beach associations are ready to go out to bid. They're basically refreshing their bid, and they're just getting new numbers. So let's say they get bids in February or March next year, and they accept those bids because they're financially they're less expensive, or the same as what they were last time. And they do their evaluation with additional funding, and they go, okay, we're ready to start digging. We're start doing it. They're prepared to go forward and do the shared part, which we benefit from, with or without us. We would still owe our share of the long-term loan. So we would have a seat at that table. We are trying to get ready to do our bids. So if we get our bids, the 60% done by January, we turn around maybe February, we get the 90% done, and then maybe May, we do the 100%, and then we do our bid. And at that time, if we need to do anything, we do the evaluation, if we can go forward with the project. We can start building the sound view part of it. But independent of that, the shared resources, the pump station essentially, doesn't need to wait for us. But we'll catch up. And ultimately, getting the work thing here. So ultimately, I think we'd be in a good place. Just leave this other meeting. Okay, sorry about that. Got distracted. I don't know. Did that answer your question, Dimitri?
Oh, I think that brings us about from 6 to 8 months behind them, correct?
Yeah, for building the sound view part. The idea is that we're going to be catching up. And we also don't know if they get the bids where one contractor bids favorably and then requests to do section by section, neighborhood by neighborhood versus all at the same time. Who knows what the run order will be to build this. But the short story is we are still behind and we're trying to catch up.
Yeah. Okay, that answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Very good.
Rich, is there another example in the state where there's been a project such as this with so many different entities? Like, I'm wondering how the project management is going to go on this.
So I don't know of another thing where they have like this, but there could be two different districts or two different neighborhoods going, but it's unusual to have two different authorities. There's other times where two different authorities have two separate projects completely, but I don't know of any example where there's multiple authorities that are sharing resources. There are multiple entities that have a say in it. I mean, this project alone, if we were doing it all by ourselves or just on our own, there's different departments we have to deal with. Clean water, deep, transportation, those things. But I think getting to your heart of the project or project management question, this is kind of coming up in new business, but we're planning on updating the cost sharing agreement between us and the private beach associations. That cost sharing agreement, the existing one, talks about how we're going to manage the shared part. So let's say we get a bill that comes in or a decision about, hey, we're going to do something. There's the description about the voting of that and how it'll handle. So in essence, it's kind of like there's 4 WPCAs, and then the shared resources is kind of like a 5th, where it's all of them together. And they vote on stuff. And, like one hot topic right now is, do we do meters or not? And we have meters that we are required by contract with meters exiting our project area, like the Forest Main, going to the neighboring towns. But the original plan and the design is to have meters from each neighborhood coming into the pump house. However, the design of those things, that decision was decided ahead of time. Then when the design came out, that the pipes aren't going to be as simple, each neighborhood has one pipe. There's going to be a couple of different pipes because of the logistics of where the houses are located. And those meters cost $500,000. Maybe we can save some money if we eliminate some of the meters and use Connecticut water usage to identify the volume that comes from each house, or generically add the volume from each house into a neighborhood and have that combined. So the answer of managing the projects and so forth is kind of like another WPCA that goes through and makes decisions. Now, we have a seat at that table. And we have shared the cost sharing agreement with everybody in the committee, and we're gonna bring that up. So that's something that these committee members will have an opportunity to say. My wife got home from work. Did that answer your question, Andrea?
Somewhat. I think this is very complicated and there's a lot of opportunities where communication and working together is going to be really important on this project.
Yeah. True. Steve, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I do, I mean, that's what I've done for the last 35 years is project management.
Yeah.
The worst job I managed was for the city of Middletown, where they had 4 different funding sources, and we had to submit, even if we're putting in the same, depending on what street we were on, even if it was just 6-inch water main, some of the streets were funded by different entities. And so there were 4 different requisitions, all mimicking each other. They all had 100, 260 line items, all the same, but all delineated out how much was allotted for each town. I mean, it can get complicated, but what, as a member of the WPCA, what you should realize is that we don't do that work. That's a project manager managing the project, either for the contractor, usually it's for the contractor. And then it's reviewed by our engineering firms long before it even gets to us. So
That's true. We have
You know,
project manager fees already.
the project management of this job will be challenging. I don't think it's all that difficult, but it would be challenging. I've worked in East Line at Pine Grove, where I was doing the pump stations, and the contractor, there was another contractor laying sewers. So, sorry about that. So it can, the contractors figure out ways of working together. It's just a matter of how you go about doing it. But the WPCA, I don't think there's going to be much. There'll be a lot of reviewing, but a lot of it's already, we're reviewing 2 other, people. So I don't think it's as daunting a task. I don't think it's as daunting a task as some people envision. That's all.
Yeah, and I think that's the cost sharing agreement update is just to fresh and get to that point of shared resources. Like there's stuff like in there, like who owns the electricity? How are you gonna pay for that? The electricity for the pump, the lights, that kind of stuff, the maintenance of, gets in that kind of level of detail. But the way I see it is that there's all gonna be a plan and there's gonna be professional, like a maintenance repair organization that's managing the equipment and giving us estimates, forecasts, and they will be voting on certain things, hey, we want to do this, want to do that. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I don't know of an easier way of doing it. And so we'll go from there. Any other questions? I think we're still on 4BII, status of additional grants. We haven't got to correspondence. So I'm going to move on to correspondence. I don't hear anything now. I'm just going to summarize some of the correspondence that we've had. We've talked a little bit about before already. The Deep sent us a letter saying the unaffordability evaluation, they agree with it, and they're going to give us an additional 15 million, and we're going to request for guardrails, and we're going to request for the next steps of how we go through this. We also got residents, 25 Miami Avenue, that's requested their septic search database be updated. They provided the dates that they were, their septic system was inspected, pumped out and cleaned. Talked to Wind River, and they confirmed that, and they also agreed or took a ticket to start submitting these pump outs to the town's database. I also thing in here is the New London IMA negotiations. So kind of the status for the people that are listening. The IMA we have with the New London, and IMA is an intermunicipal agreement, and it's where they will accept the effluent from the town of Lyme, they'll process it, and for that we have a couple of different fees. One is a buy-in for the equipment that they've already invested in. Two is the processing fee, and there's a capital equipment improvement long-term fee. We had an agreement. The agreement expired. We negotiated the new agreements. When we saw the contract had, well, it had the wrong number, which was in our favor, but we didn't think that was going to work. And it had additional requirements in there that we didn't like. And we pushed back on that. Where we are right now, we do not have an extension agreement. Our existing agreement that did expire does have a clause in there that says that they have to renegotiate with us. We are working with them, and I'm confident we're going to come to a resolution. It's been a little challenging, and I think there's some emotion that gets involved in this. I'm not sure why. It's a pretty easy, straightforward, deal. So I think it'll happen, and our next steps that we're talking about is having a sit-down meeting with New London staff. Maybe there's some other people that might have some influence with New London to get them to listen to what we're saying. In the end, I had hoped to bring this agreement and to the WPCA members and say, get a motion to approve this. It's a draft right now, so I don't want to share the details. But ultimately, that's the goal. And then it'll authorize myself or Steve, somebody, a WPCA representative, to sign it, and the first select person. By the way, I think everyone should know that Tim Griswold retired from being a first selectman. Martha Shoemaker won by election as the first selectman. Jim Lampos won as a second selectman. And I think Matt Ward is the third selectman from Republican.
No, that would be Judith Reed.
Judith Reed, thank you. So, the selectmen's, I guess they're going to be sworn in the 19th, I think. That's what I saw, was postponed from today to the 19th. Anyways, back to the correspondence. Clean Water Fund application, or actually agreements. We already talked about that, but I gave a copy of the draft. It's 52 pages long. You don't have to read it. Our bond lawyer prepared it. It was signed. We've signed this thing a couple times. And as I explained earlier, it's going through the circulation of getting approved by the state. Let's see. The last one is the trunk line reconfiguration. This is also part of the cost sharing agreement adjustment. Let me explain this a little bit. Let me get my notes here. So one of the things is going through the original cost sharing agreement. There's, if you can imagine, each neighborhood has pipes coming out of the houses, down the streets, into what they call a trunk line. And then that trunk line then goes over to the pump house. If you can visualize Old Lyme Shores, Old Colony, and Soundview have their lines going north to south and collecting in a shared trunk line and then going into the pump station. Miami is not involved in that particular trunk line because the pump station is in between that line and Miami Beach. Miami Beach has similar pipes coming out of their houses down their streets into a trunk line, and Soundview, Old Colony, and Old Lyme Shores are not participating or using that line. So the original was that the shared trunk line of Old Lyme Shores, Old Colony, and Soundview was paid for by all four entities. And Miami was paying for something that they weren't using. And the promotion or the issue before us is to do two different options. One is take Miami out of that cost as one option, or add Miami's cost of their trunk line into the other beach associations and Soundview. Either way, Soundview pays a little bit more. We probably always should have paid a little more. Old Colony and Old Lyme Shores and also pay a little bit more. And Miami gets a little bit more reasonable cost. And the option where we share the shared trunk line, pay for that separate, and the option where Miami pays for theirs separate is what I think is the right thing to do. The other option where we just throw both trunk lines in together, where we all share it and we're paying a little bit for Miami and Miami's paying a little bit for ours. They're both similar in cost. And it's not decided yet, but I did a document, and what I'm talking about, I'll get to you in a minute, Steve. The tile on the left-hand side is how it is today. The tile in the middle is Miami drops out of the cost, and the tile on the right is we all share the trunk lines together. Go ahead, Steve. You have a question?
No, I have an opinion.
Okay.
These
Opinions
are
are okay too.
these are not these trunk lines are not shared. They're not shared. They're one trunk line belongs and handles only Miami Beach, and the other one only handles our stuff. I think I forget. But they're not shared. Trunk
Well,
line.
one trunk line handles Miami all by itself.
Correct.
And the other trunk line handles Soundview, Old Colony, and Old Lyme Shores.
Right.
Now, if you look
So-
at, we're probably the pipes that connect to Old Lyme Shores, we're not involved in that particular pipe, but that's the same pipe that we then connect to later. From a linear foot point of view, let's say it's 1,000 feet long. We're using like 200 feet, and Old Lyme Shores on the end of that pipe is using the whole 1,000.
Right. So my feeling or my opinion is that Miami Beach should pay for their stuff. We shouldn't even be involved in that. I mean, we have nothing.
We're not. Currently, they're paying for it by themselves.
Right. Okay. So that's fine. And then on our side, I guess the three remaining WPCAs should pay for that other trunk, and I believe it should be broken out by linear footage. That's how it's going to be bid. It's going to be bid by, it'll be like $250 a linear feet. We have 200 feet where we owe $50,000. If someone has 300 feet, I
get what you're saying. We're paying for what we use.
well, except for the fact that calculation actually, calculation won't actually work because you'll be continually adding. I guess it would be a percentage of the total cost. Couldn't pay by linear foot. It'd be a percentage of the total cost of that section.
Yeah, and you can see how this can make it.
But I mean, I don't like any option where we group them all together and divide it up. That doesn't make any sense. As long as it's divisible in attributable, we should strive to have it attributed to the correct people and then work on funding from there. work on it.
That's the middle cube, and I think that's the right thing. That's what I've suggested, and it hasn't been decided yet. We basically are still waiting for information from the engineers in question. And it's, the design doesn't really change. It's just the associated costs linked to
Right.
the section, so we can get our estimates of how much we're paying. Does anyone else have an opinion about this? And if you don't understand it, that's okay. Let me know if you don't understand it, because this is not the first time or the last time we're going to be doing this discussion.
I think it should be discussed with all the beaches. We cannot do without opinion of the other beaches.
Oh yeah, this is being discussed. So this was proposed by Miami. So Miami proposed this, and it's understandable. They like saying, why are we paying for a part of the trunk that we're not using at all? And Miami and Old Shores have probably the most expensive projects, way more expensive than Soundview and Old Colony. So they proposed this, and it is being discussed, and it's part of the cost sharing agreement update. Anyone else? Okay. That is the end of the correspondence. Now into new business. I don't know if everyone had a chance to look at this. Andrea put together a process for invoicing. And I don't plan on workshopping it. There's probably some edits that we could do, but what I think what we need to do is formally develop a subcommittee to update or develop a procedure for invoicing and how to handle invoicing. I'll give you a little primer about how it goes today, and we get an invoice, and we don't have to do this, but I prefer that there's more than one person that signs off and reviews that invoice. So we get an invoice, and it's for something that we've already had a budget line item for, or something that we have a motion to do. I look at it, or Steve looks at it, and Andrea looks at it. Out of the three of us, two of us have to approve it. We approve it, we send it to the finance director with instructions of, this is an approved expense, please effect the payment. And we point out which account of our budget line item it should be paid for. The finance director also reviews it, and in some cases in the past, the finance director says, I don't think that's right, and questions. And the classic one was where it said, look, this is a project engineer expense and it's going to a law firm. Well, it's the project engineers had a law firm do some kind of application for something. For like the Amtrak permits or something. And that's the generic process. The concern, I guess, and I don't want to steal too much of your thunder, Andrea, maybe I'll give you a moment to say something, is we're going to be going into an area where we're going to get a lot more invoices than we used to. And we want to track what we spend and where we spend it and put it in the right buckets, because part of this also goes back to submitting to the state for reimbursement for applicable grants and so forth, and keeping track of it. Someone wants to know what, how the project's going, what's been spent, where it's been spent, that kind of thing. So, Andrea, do you want to, I probably stole some of your thunder, sorry about that. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you did and purpose and what we need to do next?
Yeah, absolutely. And no, there's no stealing thunder. So I was, did quite a bit of research, spoke with the Clean Water Fund accountant person, spoke with folks at the town, and we're trying to come up with a way where we can streamline communication, do a better, more timely job of reviewing and tracking invoices, but try to do as much as we are normally doing. Like, so some of the things that we considered was, could we have more WPCA emails? So Steve could have one, I could have one, you could have one. The answer was absolutely not. This, and we're still a town commission. The second piece is there is going to be a lot more tracking and reporting. And the state has recommended that we submit invoices before they are paid. So that way there would be an opportunity to make sure the state agrees with what was in the proposed project budget. And if something was over invoice, that we would have an opportunity to then go back to the vendor and say, hey, look, we think this should be this way. And that all has to happen within a 30 to 60-day period. Sounds like a lot of time, is not a lot of time, because there's a lot of steps and people in the process. So I do recommend that we have a subcommittee, and that subcommittee be a smaller working group like Steve, myself, and at least one other person, with all the regular people that are constantly doing this in the communication mix, or ad hoc members. That would be you, Rich, it would be Anita, it would be the selectmen, because things that get signed off for the Clean Water Fund require the select person's signature, your signature, because the town of Old Lyme's the fiduciary. So one of the tools, so one is I'm recommending a subcommittee. Two, I'm recommending a tool called the Smart Sheet. And that allows one place for multiple people to confidentially work from. And anytime that sheet is touched, people that have access to that sheet are notified from an email. So it's we could use it as a spreadsheet, but then we can also use it as a place to attach invoices and reports. So for instance, for me to prepare a budget report or a treasurer's report every month, I probably make 10 phone calls and there's a lot of processes just to come down with a very short report to make sure that everything's correct. This is a small, easy budget. The Clean Water Fund is not a small, easy budget. So I did look into how much a smart sheet would cost, and it's essentially $15 a user per month, or just under $200 a year. And I'm thinking we're going to have a minimum of 5 users. So a tool that would cost us about $1,000, which could easily fit in our miscellaneous budget, would then allow us to be more interactive and help with our communication. And then when we have a report, the report gets posted, then it gets submitted, then the response gets submitted. So we have like one place where everything is tracked. So you would
So-
continue, go ahead.
So the idea for this subcommittee, the narrower scope would be go and look at the process and develop the process. Generally speaking, the subcommittees don't make change. What they do is they do work and then they report back to this committee, and this committee approves it. So I think the first step is a subcommittee volunteers to look at this process in detail and edit it. And Andrew, you did a fine job. But as you know, whenever you ask someone to edit something, they edit,
That's
come
fine.
up with ideas. And I think part of that process would be the document, and the second part of that process is coming up with the future process, which I think is what you're talking about doing it. And then we'd have to have a debate in this committee to see, does that make sense? Is it workable? And I don't know if we need to have a discussion with the selectman's office and the finance office to see if their role in that is acceptable. But probably makes sense.
Yeah. I did
So-
circulate this to them also, and
Yep.
I think it's always a richer project to at least get something to work from that can, grow and become the document we need it to be and the process we need it to be. So this is
So-
just a starting point.
So, Steve, you have a question?
Yeah, a question and a motion. Well, just a motion right now. I motion that we form a subcommittee to review the document or the process that Andres proposed and come back to the full committee with recommendation.
Okay. Do, I have a second. If someone seconded, I didn't hear it. Thought I heard something.
I will second it.
Thank you, Dimitri. Discussion, I want to say, Erica, I hope you got that motion, because I think, I'm going to paraphrase what I think Steve said, and Steve, I get this wrong. We're going to form a subcommittee. We didn't define who was going to be on the subcommittee. It's going to be a couple of members. We're going to research this issue and then come back to the subcommittee is going to research this issue, edit the document, whatever, and then come back with a recommendation to this. Is that a good characterization of what your motion is?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about this?
I'd be more than happy to help in that.
So we got Andrea and Steve. We need I think another volunteer.
Put me, Richard.
Okay, Dimitri, Andrea, and Steve. That doesn't mean other WPCA members can, spend some time and say, here's what I track changes of the document, what I think, what I want suggested in there. Is that fair, Andrea and Steve and Dimitri? You don't mind if someone gives you suggestions?
We
No
definitely
problem.
want the suggestions.
The reason that the subcommittees can't be more than 3 members is because then you would have a quorum.
We can form a subcommittee, but you're right. I think we can have 4 members.
You can't have more than what would be a quorum.
Okay, I wasn't.
But,
that
I
makes
mean,
sense.
we could still have, they just can't be in the same, we could push out documents and people could comment.
Yeah, so.
Recommended, but
So
they
the-
just
if
can't.
you- So Andrew's
I-
already, so you can have 4 members, that's not a quorum. We have 3. And Andrea's submitted the document to everybody. You can't have an exchange back and forth. You can edit the document and send it in and, and that's it. You can't go back and forth and discuss, the business, but you can send in a document with changes and suggestions. Is all the WPCA members clear on that?
So are we only editing or are we gonna meet and edit? It doesn't matter
You
either
you
way.
can meet or
We
not
can
meet,
meet.
you can
Yep.
edit, as a subcommittee, you're tasked with this task. It's just, what you don't want to do is have WPCA members have an exchange back and forth with you. And that might trigger what looks like a quorum, and looks like an unplanned meeting.
Got it. Is there anyone else on the, and I'm sorry to ask this question, who would have experience in this area with accounting or being on other town commissions? Because we are going to be working with, I have affiliated this to the finance director and Tim before he left. So are there other folks that may be, and Dimitri, I thank you for stepping up, but I'm wondering if there's other members who haven't really had a chance to participate in projects like this and have an interest and maybe haven't said anything or have a expertise in this area and would like to participate.
Well, the motion's still going on. This is a discussion.
Yeah, we're in
I
the
didn't hear
discussion.
anyone.
I guess
You know,
I don't know what exactly you're looking for. This is Rob. I mean, I've dealt with town hall quite a bit and know a little bit about construction and all that stuff. So if you're looking for somebody else, I could get involved. But
Thank you, Rob. I was kind of hoping you'd step up.
So are we talking that Rob's gonna participate in this? The subcommittee, Andrea, Steve, Bob, and Dimitri, to some extent. And the goal will be to first take up this document and come up with a process to then submit back to this committee and maybe circulate with this first selectman and the finance director for when their parts are involved in this. And what I envision is kind of like a process steps and kind of a expectations. You know, we get an invoice from how do we handle that invoice from getting it to approving it or denying it and sending it to the state, and then the state says okay, and then they give us money, and then we turn around and ask the finance director to spend or to pay off that contractor for an approved expense.
I have one other item to ask about during this discussion. I tried to find a format and like documents for the town, and I didn't see any. So, I went to my industry and used our type of template format for something like this. So details would be in attachments, like, actual more details than to the statement. But if anyone is familiar with anything from the town that would be similar, that would also be helpful.
Okay, we're still on this motion, so I think I'm gonna call a vote for this motion. All those in favor, I'll poll each individually, and you can say yes or no. You have the option to say either. It's not a good or bad thing. So I'll just go from what I see. Dimitri, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Andrea, do you vote yes or no?
I vote yes.
Steve Berwitz, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Steve Tsunami,
Yes,
you vote yes or no?
yes.
Bob McCarthy, you vote yes or no?
yes, yes,
Corey, thank you. Corey, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
So no negatives, unanimously carried. We have a subcommittee that's going to take this task on and then report back in the future. Let's see. Okay, new business. It was suggested to me to come up with a kind of some kind of update to the public and to the residents of Soundview Miscellaneous Area B to inform them of the current status of the project. Come up with some kind of a letter. I am planning on doing that. We do this kind of every year, and our website does have some information already on it, but probably reach out to the various organizations in Soundview and ask them if they distribute it, as well as put it on the town website. I'll draft this. I'll share it with Steve and Andrea. I don't know if do we want to circulate it and wait for the next meeting to have everyone review it to approve it, or do we want to just say let myself and Steve and Andrea, as officers of the WPCA, come up with an update of the status and then put it on the website. What do you guys think? This is a discussion. I don't know if it rises to the level of a motion. No comments? Okay. Another new business item? Oh, sorry, go
I
ahead.
mean, you want some input, right? I think you could give a stat. I fully trust your judgment in providing a status to the public, Rich, without any input.
Yeah,
If
a
you,
lot of it is kind of like this meeting, you know,
right. I mean,
so.
You could
So-
just do a chair report.
Say that again, Andrea.
Sometimes they have a chair report, you know, like just a small.
Yeah, no, that's a, yeah, yeah, I've done that in the past. So it's just kind of like, you know, the major issues that are going on, like our grant funding, additional funding, the timeline, the things that we're working on. Of course, I can't get into stuff that we're negotiating, but I think it generally gives an idea to the general public what's going on. And makes it a little bit easier for someone to hear it. And it doesn't hurt to over communicate. So if someone's saying, well, we already said that. Well, we can say it again.
Yes. How would you send it out? Was that how you would go through like the local groups?
I
Or-
think I would write a letter and then I post it on our website, but I'd also ask the Soundview Commission and Coalition or, you know, and see if they would distribute it to their members. And they may or they may not, I don't know. But that's how I do it, unless someone's got a better idea. I don't think I would go to LinkedIn or anything like that, or, you know, promotional channels. I don't know, maybe the Facebook. The thing about the Facebook is we don't have the WPCA Facebook thing, and the old line and the Soundview Facebook, they don't want politics in there, and it's just a big politic trigger. So that's why I was thinking an email to people versus putting in like a, you know, Facebook.
Well, the town selectman's been putting out like a weekly update. You might be able to get either a link in that or something that,
Yes,
you know,
yes,
for people to subscribe to.
I'm sure she would have no problem doing that because actually the suggestion came from her. To be quite honest, Martha Schubeck.
Go.
All right, that's all that I have for new business. Does anyone else have any new business? Any WPCA members? Not hearing any. So now we'll go to public comment. If you done this before, you know how to do it. If you haven't done this before, the idea is if you could say your name, I'll recognize your name. You could speak about WPCA business comments. We don't normally engage in a back and forth. What we do is at the end of the public comment, we might respond, we might not, depending on the subject, depending on the issues. I think everyone should be able to comment or speak. They unmute their phone. So does anyone want to make a public comment?
I would. This is Mary Daly. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mary Derry. You recognize Mary? Go ahead.
Thank you very much. You know, at the September meeting, you, Mr. Chairman, mentioned that you had submitted a FOI to the Soundview Sewer Coalition requesting members' names, addresses, emails, etc. And had some other comments to make about me, but I would guess that over the past few years as chairman, you have received at least 50 or more freedom of information requests. So I am surprised that you do not know that freedom of information requests do not apply to private organizations, only to public organizations, and the Soundview Sewer Coalition is a private organization. And as secretary of that organization, we will not be supplying that information to you. We do not have to, and we will not. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I would like to ask, if I may, a few years back, the Soundview Sewer Coalition, members of it, asked and told the WPCA that your inventory of properties was incorrect. Has that inventory been updated? And if so, could we please get a copy of that update? And second, please clarify for me, Mr. Chairman, going forward, are you still planning to utilize Mr. Chan's revised 2A EDU application, or are you revising that based on an updated property inventory? So that's my second question. And my third question, if I may, please refresh my memory. When WPCA initially devised their definition of ownership between the PBAs and Soundview Area B, based on Woodward and Curran's evaluation, what was that calculation based on? Was it based on housing appraisal, square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms? What was the criteria that Woodward and Curran used to say that we were 29.7? I think that's all. I'm sorry, one more.
Mary, if I could stop you, that last one that you said, could you?
I can't hear you.
Possibly
Keep
could
saying
repeat
it
that?
now
I'm not
because you're
sure I
not
got it.
talking into your mic. Please talk into your mic so I can hear you.
I am talking to my mic. It's right here. It's on my face. I didn't hear that last thing that you said. If you could please repeat that last.
Absolutely, yeah. My third request, please, was please refresh my memory. When Woodward and Curran initially devised their definition of ownership between the PBAs and Soundview Area B, what was that calculation based on? Was it based on housing appraisal, square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms? What was the criteria that Woodward and Curran used to come up with the 29.75? And lastly, project management, as you seem to agree tonight, is very complicated. I guess I would like to ask, who is that? Who is going to be the project manager of this project going forward? Thank you.
I'm writing some notes now. Thank you, Mary Daly.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to make a public comment? If you're speaking, I can't hear you. Okay. We're going to end the public comment session. It's disappointing that you're not, Soundview Coalition's asked for your information repeatedly. And it's also disappointing to say that you speak for the Soundview residents, but you won't identify those residents. But that's right, you don't have to do it. That's why it was a request. Inventory update. I'm not sure what inventory miscalculations you're talking about. If you have an inventory that is incorrect, please let us know. But that's not what we're focusing on at the moment, to be quite honest. But we will be refreshing our inventory. Just like we refreshed our inventory, the septic search database. Some things have changed. Some buildings were knocked down. Some people's residents, their names have changed, sold the property and so forth. As far as using the EDU updating, a lot of these questions were kind of dissimilar. Back in the original evaluation, the wastewater plan, Wood and Curran came up with a list of EDUs estimates, and there was an estimate based on the properties that they surveyed. The EDU amounts depended on buildings that were going to be built, buildings that had approved lots that were going to be rehabbed. Some of the buildings, at least one of them, the most biggest one is the Kitty Land was torn down. It probably wouldn't have been torn down it wasn't gonna be assessed, but it's still a buildable lot. And as far as, the 29.7%, the basis for that cost ownership, and I believe he's referring to the cost ownership agreement, is the percent of EDUs, and the EDUs is a estimate on volume that comes out of capacity that could come out of the number of buildings. But the EDU amount or the EDU thing is not what the agreement is. The agreement is we agreed to a cost sharing amount of ownership. That's ultimately what you have to get to, that percentage times the amount of cost. So if you have that as a variable, because we don't know what the costs were going to be from day to day, year to year, then we come up with some kind of percentage ownership of it. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. It is reasonable, yes, and it's practical, and that's just how it goes. Because when we're sharing the resources, we're saving a lot of money, versus building two separate treatment plants next to each other, side by side, costing double. And as far as the project management list, the current project manager is a Wood and Current engineer, Jason Chikadis. I don't know if he's going to be the project engineer down the road, but that's the current one. The private beach associations have a separate project engineer, project manager. I don't know his name, but you could ask them for who that is. And that brings us to the end of our public comments. I invite any WPCA members if they'd like to make a comment. In addition, not required to, but if you want. Okay, I don't hear any, so I'm gonna entertain a motion to adjourn in a second. Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn? Steve raised his hand indicating he wants the motion to adjourn. Any second it?
I'll second it.
Dimitri seconded it. All those in favor say aye.
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 I see a couple ayes hands.
I,
I'm gonna assume that everyone agrees to this and motion's adjourned, motion accepted. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a nice night. Relax. Take the rest of the night off. Talk to you guys later. All right.
Thank you.
Bye now.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.